So this passage that we have this morning from Isaiah is, as Andrew said, it's a vision of the mountain of the Lord. And over these Sundays of Advent, I was wanting to focus on the different places of Christmas and in a sense, the holy places. So, Brian has been spending some time in one of those holy scenes that we can see that speaks to us about Christmas. That's an easy one in a sense. This morning's passage is another visually beautiful place for us to imagine. And Isaiah sees it in his mind. I want to just bring up a photo. My friend just went to Jerusalem, and I thought we could have this in the background. It's one of those typical photo scenes of Jerusalem today, just a few weeks ago. And so there is the Holy Mountain and the temple on it. So this little poem, if you like, you could call it a psalm, but not from the book of Psalms, but this poem from Isaiah is of the mountain of God. He says, in the days to come. So we immediately know right from the very start that he's not talking literally about what he sees now and what these people could build as they're trying to restore the city of Jerusalem. But he's talking about what God will do in the future. And so he has this vision, and he's sharing this vision as a vision of hope. A bit like we light a candle and we talk about the things we might hope for at Christmas. Isaiah's passage is a vision of hope of what God will do in the days to come. So it says, the mountain of the Lord will be lifted up and made higher than all the other mountains. He's not thinking literally the tallest mountain in the world. He's thinking the mountain of God. God is going to make his house on this holy hill. And it would be like it was the highest place around. It would be such that you could see it from wherever you were. And the nations would come to it. The nations would be streaming from every part of the world, every corner of the world, to come to this place, to come to God's house and to his holy mountain. And he says that God might teach them his ways, that he would show them his pathway and teach them his instructions, his laws. And so Advent is a time of preparation. It's a time of getting ready for the coming of God. It's a time of getting ready for Christmas Day. But in doing so, we're thinking about the coming of God. So that's what we're actually preparing for. That God would come, that God would establish his reign, his house, his mountain, if you like, here on earth. And this reminds us that our excitement about Christmas is well-founded, because God will go to extraordinary lengths to put back together, to rebuild what's broken. We were talking just a moment ago in our prayers of intercession, about the broken things we see in the world, about the needs that are heartbreaking to us. And this passage reminds us we can have hope because God will go to extraordinary lengths to repair the brokenness of this world. That's what we have hope in. That there is a day coming when God will repair all of that brokenness. That it will all be gone. That there will be no more need for war. No more need to teach people the ways of war. That's what Isaiah is envisaging when he thinks of this holy mountain. It's a passage about recalling the breadth, the depth, and particularly this morning, the height of God's love for us. That's what we're waiting for. That's what the time of Advent is about anticipating. And so you remember that Isaiah is speaking these words to a people who have come back from the exile. And they're literally rebuilding the rubble of this city. And so he's talking to them about the day when Jesus, when God would establish his mountain and do this in his divine power. So our Advent invitation, our Advent dare, if you like, is that we would look forward to that coming realm of God with a joyful expectation. That it would actually be something that captivates us. That it's not just a nativity scene that we put out in Christmas time, in December. But it's actually something that we would be people of hope. I remember I had the privilege of going to a Seder, a Jewish festival at the time of Christmas, but it's celebrating the Passover meal. And I was a little disappointed as I was talking to our Jewish guide at the night that he didn't seem like he was expecting the Messiah to come. Now that might seem like a strange thought, but obviously they don't believe Jesus was God's son, that he was the Messiah. And so when I talked to him about, what are they expecting, he seemed to have no expectations. There was no expectation that God was actually going to come. And that struck me as a bit strange. I thought that if he didn't see Jesus as God's Messiah, that they would be waiting for the Messiah. That he would be a person of hope, a person of great expectation. But that's not what I felt. But you know what? The truth is the same for us. We should be people of joy and expectation in God's reign, that God will come. I guess the question is, are we? Are we people living in that joy and in that expectation? Is that what other people would think about us when they met us, when they talk to us about what we believe? That's what this passage is really all about. What is abundantly clear, however, is that we are not yet on God's holy mountain. This mountain that he would establish that would be the place of his home. I don't feel like we're there yet, are we? When we look at our world, when we look at all of that brokenness, or the things that go wrong, we know that we're not on that mountain, that God hasn't done it yet. We are still scattered, we're still divided, we're still in the midst of warring all the time. Some of us on our journeys, if you like, are not on the mountain of God's presence, but rather down in a valley of sorrow or loss. Some of us are caught on a winding path, maybe leading there, but we're in such tight bends that we can't see the home of God. We can't see the mountain of God directly in front of us. And that causes anxiety, that the future is somehow unknown. Some of us are lost and we know we can't find what we're looking for. We don't even know where we're supposed to turn or where we should be. And then there are some of us that are lost and don't even know that we're just going round and round in circles and not getting anywhere. No matter where we are on our journey, it can be easy to give up on hope. It can be easy to lose the hope we have for what is coming when God's reign would be established. We can be so focused on the immediate surroundings that we lose sight of that promised land, that And we lose sight of the height of where God's home is. But Paul encouragingly writes to those just like us. He says, salvation is nearer now than when we first began. Salvation is nearer now than when we first began this journey. And it doesn't matter where we are on the journey. It doesn't matter how our lives are going at the moment. But that's something to remember, that we are closer now to God's salvation than when we started. God's action in this passage is quite wonderful and remarkable. The good news that the prophet has for us is that God has begun construction. He is establishing his reign. He has started to build the house, if you like, on the top of the mountain. And there's going to be, I guess, an amazing view. It might be a view to die for, that's a spoiler alert, but the good news is that there will be a housewarming party, and we are all invited, every one of us. These things are going to happen in the days to come. So we may not quite have the invitation for the housewarming party just yet, but what we do have is an invitation that we would walk in the light of God. What's interesting about this passage is that God is not seen as a ruling king, but God is spoken of as a teacher and a judge and an arbitrator. Not a judge as in handing out punishment, but a judge between people's conflicts, settling those disputes and those things that go wrong. So we have this image of all the nations of the world coming to God's mountain, coming to his house on a hill, because they want to know God's will. They want to know God's laws. They want to know how to walk on God's path. All of the nations coming together because of that desire to know God and be taught by God. And they see God as the teacher and the one who would sort out their differences, who would help them come to some kind of a compromise when it's needed. That is a transformation from warring among one another to coming to God's place, wanting and longing to be taught from God's word. This is an affirmation that history will reach its goal. And the goal is the reign of God. And this is something that God is doing. God is establishing. And it's not that we have to go out and make it happen. God is doing this remarkable thing. And so we do have an invitation. And the invitation is to join in what God is doing. This passage finishes, this vision finishes with, O house of Jacob, that is the people of God, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. No matter where you are on the path, our feet can tread in the light of God's word, in the light of the Lord. If God is the one that we're looking to, if God is the one that is directing our path, then everywhere is a place that is special. Every place is a holy place. And it doesn't matter if we're on our way to the mountain or if we're somewhere caught between the manger and we've got something stuck to our shoes. If we allow God to be our teacher, then every place is holy.